Hello, everybody! Welcome back to another episode of the Indie Fantasy Friday Review Report. My name is Katherine D. Graham, and I am a fantasy author and Readsy Discovery reviewer and editor. Today, we are going to talk about 4 new books that I have reviewed over different points in time within the fantasy genre, and one that skirts the science fantasy genre, but was so good that I couldn't leave it off for today's review. As always, you can see previous episodes by going back and checking out my channel. The month of June started out with me trying to do a 1 new fantasy book every day challenge, and because of workload, I'm actually having to pause June 15th from reading a new book every day, but I will resume that in July, and in the meantime I will be sharing other books that I've reviewed through the year, as well as some of the ones that I didn't get to in the last couple weeks' reviews. With that, let's jump right in with our 4 new reads for this week. The first book I'm reviewing today is Bellbreaker. This is by Chris Cardenas. I really hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Chris, if you're watching this. Bellbreaker is a sci-fi / science fantasy, depending on what you personally classify as science fantasy, mixed with Mech. I feel like this was a lot like Gundam, if you're a Gundam fan. I like Gundam in small amounts, but this was every bit as good as Gundam, and I would say it elevates on the classic tropes of a young, untrained hero or heroine in this case being thrown into a situation where they're trying to save their entire world by piloting a machine that they didn't know how to run. Bellbreaker exists in a magical universe where water works very differently and people travel basically waves around. And when war comes to the main character's home world, it's up to them to get back home and try to save the ones they love while piloting this giant mech suit. Overall, I gave Bellbreaker a 5 out of 5. The world building sucked me in from the very beginning, kept me on the edge of my seat. There are twists of all different levels in here, betrayal, love and loss, and it's just beautifully done, and it has me anxiously awaiting book 2. I did see this week that Bellbreaker has also been accepted for some library placements, so if you want a copy at your library, try going onto their website and searching it, because I think if you request a book, it's like 7 times or something, maybe they'll stock it. But in the meantime, you can read my full review of Bellbreaker by clicking the link in the description. The second book that I have today is Wolf Healer. Wolf Healer is a YA shifter fantasy by Huckleberry Rahr. It is a debut fantasy novel. This one has a very unique twist. While I've read a lot of wolf shifter books, I've never picked one up that has this twist. It is also an LGBTQ plus fantasy with a very diverse cast of characters and a strong LGBTQ main character named Jade. And it's, again, very well done. I'm shocked that this is Huckleberry's debut novel, to be perfectly honest. I've been a part of Huckleberry's journey since connecting with her on social media, and reading this book, the finalized version, literally moved me to tears, and I'm not one that cries a lot. There's a lot of raw coming to accept yourself, coming to accept your family's non-acceptance, and your peers' non-acceptance, and the way that Huckleberry talks about the LGBTQ issues in the book is so natural and uplifting and positive that it sort of fights that isolation that a lot of teens may feel. And I feel like this is just a really relevant topic for our current world that we're in, and a huge underrepresented minority. So I definitely recommend Wolf Healer. There's not a whole lot of romance in this one, although there's a couple romantic subplots that are being set up for future books. Wolf Healer is available on Kindle Unlimited, and you can read my full review on that on Goodreads as well. The third book that I have today is another 5-star. You guys are blowing it out of the water this year. If you're watching and you don't know me, I'm known for being sort of critical with my reviews. Last year, out of over 60 books, only 19 earned a 5-star, so I've had a ton of 5 stars so far in 2022. This review is for an anthology called the Once Upon a Name Anthology. I am specifically referring to Susan Stradiotto's Maiden of the Bone Marsh. This is an anthology of short stories, so if you're going to buy it, be aware that unlike Realm of Darkness, that my book is coming out in October, which is full-length novels, and Susan has one in that set. These are short stories, but they come really, really close to just packing a punch for the stories that you get. I was left really wishing I could go more into the world that Susan built. Susan's story sort of brings Asian-inspired fantasy influences into her tale in the set. There's a wide variety of other fantasy stories in the set as well, though, if the Asian twist isn't for you. But being a fan of everything Japanese, I thoroughly appreciated having some Japanese culture represented in Susan's tale. Her story follows a young man who's trying to find his way in the world and decide whether he wants to be with a woman everybody expects him to marry, or follow a secret destiny that seems to be calling him. And I will leave it up to you to find out what happens. But I have the full review up for that on Goodreads as well. I have glanced at some of the other stories in the set. I did purchase the whole set, and I'm excited to read more. There are several great authors included in Once Upon a Name. The final book that I have today is The Grimmelkin Knight. This is by Luis M. Mejia. Luis has been a guest on this channel a couple times. I found The Grimmelkin Knight through Readsy Discovery, and I have linked my Readsy Discovery review in the description for you. I did not know Luis before I reviewed the book. This is a new cover with the Grimalkin on it. So the Grimalkin makes me think of like a Khajiit from Skyrim. He is sort of a coward in the story when he starts out, and you really get to grow with him as he grows into a new, like, more confident character, accepting of the destiny that's thrust upon him. He's thrust into this situation where he has to be the knight that saves the princess's brother. And so he's sent out on this adventure across magical realms. There's dwarves, there's everything you could want in a epic YA fantasy, which is what this is. Romance is a subplot only in this one, so this is definitely about a beautiful world, a beautiful adventure, overcoming bullies, overcoming just racial prejudice between everybody who looks down on him because he is a Grimalkin, which is like this cat character. And the end, I will say, has been the most surprising ending I have read of an indie book in probably the entire year. I'm usually pretty good at predicting book endings because I edit books, and so I've seen so many different versions of like the same kind of thing over and over and over. But Grimelkin Knight was a huge surprise, and a twist on every page. There are a couple scenes of loss in it that I wasn't expecting from a YA tale, but I would think that this would be a great introduction to modern day epic fantasy for someone who's looking for something that's like not quite as old-fashioned as The Hobbit, but has those same true vibes, because I got a lot of Hobbit vibes from this book. So those are the different 4 books that we had this week, 4 5 stars. If you have a indie fantasy book that you would like me to read, please leave it in the comments. While I'm not reading a whole lot more for fun in June, I will be resuming my 1 book a day challenge in July, and I would love to have that list. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to hear what you think of them as well. These authors are all amazing indie authors, and I'm excited to share more reviews with you next week. So like, subscribe. I'll see you next Friday. Bye, everybody.